beautiful singing that you've shared with us this morning. Our experience of Yom Kippur would have been unrecognizably different in the days when the temple in Jerusalem still stood. While the commandments to refrain from work and to afflict ourselves, the universally understood source for the practice of fasting on Yom Kippur, while those commandments come from the Torah, it says nothing about gathering in synagogues and praying, or listening to the rabbi talk, or reciting Yizkor. Instead, ancient Yom Kippur practice revolved around the rituals described in this morning's Torah reading. A scapegoat bearing the weight of the entire nation's misdeeds on its shoulders was sent into the wilderness, and the high priest entered the Holy of Holies, the divine nexus at the heart of the temple that was only accessible to him and only on this awe-filled day. Those rituals atoned for all the actions of the entire Jewish people, no matter whether one was in Jerusalem or hundreds of miles away. And while Yom Kippur was the paradigmatic event showcasing the centrality of the temple, the daily sacrifices, songs of the Levites, and the expansive priestly rituals made the first and second temples the beating hearts of the Jewish world. It has been almost 2,000 years since the destruction of the last holy temple in Jerusalem. Between that extensive passage of time and the ways in which Jewish practice has evolved and adapted over the millennia, it is nearly impossible for us to imagine what life would be like with a temple. Nevertheless, we need to understand just how disruptive and tragic the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans in 70 CE was to the Jewish community. I'd like to share one account of the community response to the destruction of the Second Temple as recounted in the Talmud. When the temple was destroyed a second time, there was an increase in the number of ascetics among the Jews, whose practice was to not eat meat and to not drink wine. Rabbi Yoshua joined them to discuss their practice. He said to them, "My children, for what reason do you not eat meat and do you not drink wine?" They said to him, "Shall we eat meat from which offerings are sacrificed upon the altar, and now the altar has ceased to exist? Shall we drink wine which is poured as a libation upon the altar, and now the altar has ceased to exist?" The passage opens with the description of a people shaken to their core. Judaism generally encourages us to engage with and enjoy the world around us. It has never been a religion of asceticism, with the possible exception of today. Yet a growing proportion of the population could only process the grief stemming from the loss of the temple by pulling back from their enjoyment of daily life and severing their connection to anything that reminded them of temple practice. Rabbi Yoshua knew that this depressed and depressing vision of Jewish life would not sustain itself. So he tries to dissuade them. The passage continues. Rabbi Yoshua said to them, "If so, we will not eat bread either, since the meal offerings that were offered upon the altar have ceased." They replied, "You are correct. It is possible to subsist with produce. We will not eat bread." Rabbi Yoshua said to them, "We will not eat produce either, since the bringing of the first fruits have ceased." They replied, "You are correct. We will no longer eat the produce of the 7 species from which the first fruits were brought." At this point, perhaps Rabbi Yoshua is in over his head. The people are calling his bluff at every turn, and he only seems able to exacerbate the issue. But Rabbi Yoshua holds an ace up his sleeve. He said to them, "If so, we will not drink water, since the water libation has ceased." They were silent as they realized that they could not survive without water. Rabbi Yoshua said to them, "My children, come, and I will tell you how we should act. To not mourn at all is impossible, as the decree was already issued and the temple has been destroyed. But to mourn excessively, as you are doing, is also impossible. Rather, this is what the sages said. A person may plaster his house with plaster, but he must leave over a small amount in it without plaster to remember the destruction of the temple. The sages also said that a person may prepare all that one needs for a meal, but one must leave out a small item to remember the destruction of the temple. They recommend something akin to a small fried fish. In other words, we always maintain some element of incompleteness. As we go about our lives, we intentionally leave something out of place to remember not just the destruction of the temples, but also to remind ourselves that it is impossible to experience perfect joy in an imperfect world. This passage from the Talmud is a fine example of the power of Aggadah, Jewish wisdom based in storytelling rather than law. Although we think of the Talmud as a work of Halachah, Jewish law, there are innumerable passages like this one, where stories bring the text of the Talmud to life and bring heart and soul to the rabbinic back and forth that it contains. Part of what has made the Talmud such a valued and timeless Jewish text is its balance of Halachah and Aggadah, a mix of laws as determined by our teachers and the human stories of our teachers. The episode between Rabbi Yoshua and the ascetics can be viewed through the interplay and sometimes the tension between Halachah and Aggadah. The people mourning the loss of the temple are caught up in the Halachah, the rituals that can no longer be performed, and their desire to cope with that loss through concretely prohibiting certain actions. Rabbi Yoshua is more concerned with the Aggadah, how the people can incorporate the loss into their lives. Making space for mourning and grieving is important. Not letting our grief overtake every aspect of our lives is equally important. Chaim Nachman Bialik, who lived at the turn of the 20th century and is still known as Israel's national poet, collected and edited an encyclopedic tome of Aggadah from throughout the Talmud and the Midrashic literature. Here's how he characterizes the differences between Halachah and Aggadah. Halachah wears a frown, Aggadah a smile. The one is strict, harsh, unyielding as iron, all justice. The other is accommodating, lenient, softer than oil, all mercy. Halachah commands and knows no halfway house. Her yea is yea and her nay is nay. Aggadah advises and takes account of human limitations. She admits something between yea and nay. On the side of Halachah is the dryness of prose, a formal and heavy style, a gray and monochrome diction where reason is sovereign. On the side of Aggadah is the sap of poetry, a style full of life and variety, a diction all ablaze with color, where emotion is sovereign. Judaism needs both Halachah and Aggadah. Had our ancestors wholeheartedly moved on and forgotten the glory of the temple, core elements of Judaism also would have been forgotten. Had they succumbed wholeheartedly to their sadness, there would have been nothing left worth remembering. When we experience loss, we can also feel like our world is irreparably shattered. Yizkor, the act of memory, of memorializing, also requires Halachah and Aggadah in order to help us gather the fragments and put our worlds back together. We need some of the strict formality of halachah to provide structure, the familiar Aramaic formula of the mourner's Kaddish, the facts of people's lives, their Hebrew names, their yortzites, their birthdays. When we memorialize large tragedies like the Holocaust or October 7th, we record how many people died and where they were from. And we need the life, variety, and color of Aggadah. What made someone special? What made them smile? What made them laugh or cry? And how we can find the unique humanity in each and every soul lost in communal tragedy. And in the balance of halachah and Aggadah, we can also find the balance of mourning appropriately without mourning excessively. We know that we will never be whole again. There is a small corner of ourselves left unplastered, a small fish missing from our plates. And that small imperfection always keeps alive the connection, joy, and legacy that our loved ones left us with. The Talmudic passage ends on a note of hope. Anyone who mourns for the destruction of Jerusalem will merit and see its joy, as it is stated in the book of Isaiah, Simchu et Yerushalayim v'gilu ba et kol ohaveha, sisu ita masos kol hamitablim aleha. Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her, all that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all that mourn her. As we continue together with Yizkor, let us open ourselves to the flood of memory. The gladness, the sadness, the mourning, and the joy. Let's celebrate the halachah and Aggadah of our loved ones who shaped us and who we carry with us throughout our lives. I'll invite you to rise as we continue with Yizkor on page 290.